started. I'm sure there'll be some people to join us as we move along. I know there's a foundation meeting, so I think they're gonna travel over here as soon as they concluded. So let me start by thanking all of you for coming out tonight. Some important information to share, obviously. You have a handout that was on your seat. That's a document that was prepared by the city explaining the proposals that will be on the November 5th ballot. We are available to answer any questions. There is a second informational meeting scheduled. And there are also additional documents that will be available at City Hall and the Community Center that is specific to your property and how the millage increase, if passed, would affect your property taxes and your water bill. So just to let you know a little bit of history, I have been talking with the City Commission for quite a few years about the idea of a millage increase. I knew on the horizon was the end of the infrastructure millage, and that it would be my recommendation that that be renewed. And in addition to that, I am ever mindful of what's coming down the road from the state and what we have endured, and I don't look for that to be any better in the near future. What you may not know is that some years ago, the city started doing multi-year budgeting, forecasting, and obviously some projections. We've been able to do that because, as you know, our city treasurer is a person from Plant Moran, and those are services that they offer. And that has been a tremendous tool for us to follow as we make plans for budgets and future planning for funding. So when I tell you that I have seen not only some of the reductions that has happened, I'm very much aware of some of the conversations in Lansing that are ongoing, and we try to keep tabs on any new legislation that may be introduced that would impact us. Most recently, last year, there was a change to the personal property tax, and there is legislation being introduced almost on a daily basis for changes to that again. And although it wouldn't hit us like it would hit perhaps a city like Troy, any loss in revenue does have a negative impact on our bottom line. I look eventually for personal property tax, although it has changed. I have a feeling that that may eventually be eliminated. There's continuing discussion about state shared revenue. The state a number of years ago decided that it was entitled to keep some of the statutory portion of our state shared revenue, in spite of the protests by communities, Pleasant Ridge included, that traveled to Lansing to speak on this. In 10 years, the city lost or was reduced by $1.2 million in state shared revenue. That has had a serious impact on our city, and something that we plan for, we anticipate, and we are conservative with our estimates during the budget season every year. In the last couple of years, there's been discussions that they haven't gone anywhere yet, but now the state is looking and exploring the idea of whether or not they can keep a portion of the constitutional side, which is something that voters approved, and it will be a little more difficult, I think, for them to hold back any of those funds, but it will not shock me or surprise me if that happens. And so because, again, of us looking a few years in the future, we anticipate some of these things, and it puts us in a better position. So my recommendation to the City Commission over the past couple of years, as you know, there has been much talk about the ever-increasing cost of water bills. And that's a conversation I'm very familiar with, have written several white papers on it, memorandum on it. And the city commission decided that now was the time to take a look at some alternative ways and methods of billing that would perhaps give some relief on the water bill, including asking the administration to take a look at what would it be like if we moved some of the fees onto the tax bill. And so we did that. One thing on your water bill, one item on your water bill is the cost of debt for the George W. Kuhn drain. That is a debt that the city must pay its portion for federally mandated improvements that came down a number of years ago. And I believe we were responsible for about 1.3% of that debt. We have an option of moving the cost of that off the water bill onto the tax bill. That's a given. In fact, there was disagreement among many attorneys as to whether or not it would take a vote of the people to do that, or whether or not the governing body could vote and move it. And there are communities that have done just the vote of the people because it's actually Headley, and then other communities went to a vote of the people. And so when this was discussed, it was my recommendation that it go, and the city commission agreed, that if that was an option, that they would take it to a vote of the people, just because it would give people an opportunity to say how they felt about that. So that's part of this millage proposal this evening is, excuse me, 1 mil that will be used to pay the annual cost of the debt to the GWK drain. And I'm not gonna get real specific about the breakdown of the millage and how it will be used, because Mr. Peterzak has a PowerPoint presentation that's more clear. I really just wanted to give you a little bit of history of how we got where we are today. So I was pleased this year when the City Commission, after we presented a number of methods and proposals to them, they agreed, and again, this was part of the discussion was with the water bills, but the City Commission agreed, and there was evidence to show it was needed, that this would be included on the November 5th ballot, and they approved language for the ballot at the May City Commission meeting of this year. I think most of you do understand that our city took steps prior to the economic crisis in the state, again, because we anticipated what might be coming. And we made major reductions, not only in personnel and benefits, but we tried to find ways, creative ways, that we could reduce some of the cost of services with additional collaboration. And the type of service, reducing a little bit of the time frame, like we did with the curbside leaf collection, that wouldn't have necessarily a negative impact on your quality of life, but would still provide a little bit of relief in the cost of that program, which is very expensive, as most of you know. We were able to reduce hours at City Hall. That saved a little bit, and so we looked at every department. There was 1 year when I went to the department heads, including the fire chief, who is employed by another community, but he was most cooperative too, and asked everyone to reduce their budget by 20%. That was not easy. I asked our private contractors to do the same. So we have taken steps that has allowed us to remain stable. And in fact, I always brag that we are probably very strong and one of the strongest in the area. But even Pleasant Ridge gets to a point when you cannot balance a budget on reductions. And I don't think anyone would want to do that. So the amount that's recommended, in addition to the portion that'll go from the water bill onto the tax bill, is 5.3618. 2 mils of that is for water and sewer, with the remainder to general fund. And there is a myriad of services that will address in the millage. The one question that I have heard time and again over the past few weeks is why 20 mills? If general fund is at 11, why do we have to go up to 20 mills? And I can tell you with all assuredness that you need the flexibility at this time. This is a city that does not ask for tax increases quickly. It does not ask for tax increases until all other alternatives have been explored and implemented. And I can tell you from presenting a budget every year that is balanced, it's not an easy task. I enjoy it. This is the time to ask you to approve this, and I believe that you need the flexibility of having additional funding available. That doesn't mean that it will be increased with any risk per se. It can only be increased by a vote of the elected officials. It can only be increased after a public hearing is held. And this is public knowledge and public discussion every year during the months of April, May, and June. There are new laws also. This is most worrisome for us and most communities, where you've either read or heard about unfunded liabilities. And mainly that talks about the cost of retirees' benefits. It's post-employment, OPEB as it's called. Under the new laws it's called GASB, it's the financial portion of the laws that we must follow as for the financial side of the balance sheet. They're requiring communities now to not only state on your balance sheet what that liability is, but to fund it. For some cities, that will put them in bankruptcy. And most cities, many cities, have always used the pay-as-you-go. You meet your obligation, you pay your bill, and everything is good. That's evident in Pleasant Ridge by our bond rating. And bond ratings are serious business, as you probably know, and they do not make changes to your rating. They seem, in my mind, that they will make a change to knock you down, but it is very difficult to make a change, and we have a AA plus, I think, is what our rating is. So for that reason, that's an argument that communities use when they go to the state and they say you can't do this and this is what will happen and there should be no concern. But I want you to be aware of it and to be concerned. So you understand that there's complex, and yet it's very easy. I stand before you to tell you that this is a millage that's needed at this time. I think you enjoy the quality of life as probably one city that offers some of the highest quality and level of services. You look around and you see a beautiful community, and there's a reason for that, because you all invest not only your time and your efforts, you invest your dollars and you invest your efforts into making it what it is. And so my recommendation not only was to include this millage this year, I want to tell you that, well, I guess the best thing now is just to let Mr. Peterzak explain what the millage will be used for, how it came about, and then if you have questions, we'll be happy to answer them. And there's plenty of us here tonight that can answer any questions. So, Scott, with that, he does have a PowerPoint, but it's not real long. Yeah.
We'll try to get through it quickly here. There's a lot of, by the way, thank you everybody for coming. There's a lot of information that's out there for this topic, so we're going to try to just educate you a little bit on the Headley Amendment, and then we'll go into how it can affect us and the effect that it's going to have on Pleasant Ridge. So basically, and like Sherry said, in May, the City Commission approved ballot language to put a heavy override on the November ballot. And the Commission felt that residents should decide what to do about decreasing tax revenue, large decreases in state shared revenue, record low interest rates, and its effect on its services. Property values have dropped or remained stable since 2009, which has caused a decrease in our tax revenue. The stagnant property values coupled with rollback millage rate has resulted in a decrease of $160,000 in general operating revenue since 2008. And $160,000 is definitely a lot of money to some municipal governments. It's probably not a lot, but our general fund operating millage or operating fund is about 2.4 million. So it's a good amount of money for us. It's a department. So now, of course, my thing isn't going to work. Oh, here we go. Technology, right? So, real quick, the Headley Amendment is kind of hard to explain. It goes, as property values go up, you would think, oh, the city's going to get a whole bunch more money because I'm paying more taxes, and if property values went up 10% last year, the city's going to have 10% more revenue. Well, that's not the case. It's not allowed to go up more than the rate of inflation or 5%. So if property values go up 10%, our millage rate is going to get rolled back down the amount that we are allowed to charge the residents on their property taxes, that same amount. So if it goes up 10%, we'll get rolled back. It could be anywhere from 5 to 7%. So we really don't see too much more revenue, minus maybe 1 to 2% based on what the rate of inflation is. And you can see, so your millage rate's getting rolled back, even though your property values are going up. The revenue stays just about the same. The amendment really butts head with Proposal A because Proposal A caps everything, and then this puts another limitation on there. So revenues are definitely something that's tough to come by with the two proposals. So a heavy override is a vote of the people to allow the city to go back to its original amount that it was allowed to in the charter, which is 20 mills for the city of Pleasant Ridge. And that when I say 20 mills, that's for the general operating portion of the millage. There is a general operating millage, there is a solid waste millage, there's a pool operation and pool bond millage, there's a library millage, and all those add up to a number. So right now, we're rolled back to about 11.4 on our general operating portion of the millage. So the vote is asking to go back up to what originally was approved by the voters at 20. And at the same point, the solid waste, which is originally approved and it's actually enacted by the state, they're allowed to charge up to 3 mills for solid waste. We're rolled back to 1.7 on that millage. So that's why on your water bill you see a little line that says GU, and that's solid waste or garbage service charge on your water bill, because we're not able to collect the amount we need to from the taxes to be able to pay for leaf collection, recycling, and garbage pickup. So that's why that is on there. So as we said, the stated increases that the city commission has pledged when we go forward, if this passes, is to send the general up to 15.5 and send the rubbish/solid waste up to 3.0. So it's in total, about 5.3 mils. So here's a chart just to show you our general fund revenue and expenditures since 2008. And we've had, like I said, a decrease in revenues of $160,000. And at that same time, we've been decreasing our expenditures to the tune of about $276,000. So we've been able to cut more out of the budget than what we've actually been able to spend. But we're at that point now. You can only cut so much. Once you've cut all the big items, all these little ones are out there that you either can't cut or you can't raise. And I'll talk about revenues here in a second. But you can see that that line is decreasing, and we have seen a little uptick here in the last couple of years, just because the cost of doing business is going up. If you see gas prices go up at the pump, a loaf of bread costs you more at the store. It's all relative. So does Pleasant Ridge need a heavily override? The City Commission thinks so. There's no provision. When I say we get rolled back, there's no provision to roll up. Like when we saw those years of declining property values, you're not able to go and raise it back up and say, oh, okay, we just lost 8% of our property tax value. Can we lift the rollback 8% to equal that money? There's no provision to do that. So that's why you see all these cities were dying a slow death. With these property tax cuts, these property values going down, and there's still some cities that are really struggling. Hazel Park, places like that are they're struggling. They haven't seen the little uptick that we have, or at least a stable housing market. So the millage rates in conjunction with little or no property value increase means less revenue for the city. So it just stays the same. Your revenue stays the same. Your expenditures are going up. And that's why we talk about here, cost of fuel, insurance, building utilities, maintenance on aging facilities, infrastructure, sewer pipes, water lines, vehicles, water and sewer rates, and capital improvement projects, which we've almost near cut out of every budget for the last 4 to 5 years. So we'll get to what the actual ballot language is for Proposal A, which is in your handout there, so I'm not going to read it word for word, but it does state up to 20 mills from approximately 11.4248, which is $20 per $1,000 of taxable value. Again, I stated the City Commission is committed to making that number at about 15.5, not the full 20. But they do want a little bit of flexibility. I was talking with a gentleman beforehand. The day after the millage passes your next tax season, you start getting rolled back again. So if you approve at 15.5 and all of a sudden we had a huge uptick in the property values, say, who knows what would happen, and Ben Affleck moved into town and everyone wanted to live next to him or something, so we would start getting rolled back again, and we'd be in the same boat we're in, and it could be 5 years, could be 10 years. So you really want that flexibility to be able to keep it at the level where the people in Pleasant Ridge expect the service level to be at. And then the second part of that is the 3 mills from 1.7 on the solid waste portion, which is a direct effect to the water bill, which we'll talk about here in a few. So we talk about the rate. The maximum allowable millage for the general operation would go from 11.4248 to 15.5 mils, or an increase of 4.0752, and that's on the general portion. And then the ballot language states up to 20. However, the City Commission is pledged to go to 15.5, and then if needed, they do have that other flexibility. And the same for the solid waste. And this is where the effect comes in on your water bill. The amount will be deducted from the GU charge on your water bill, which is the garbage. The quarterly charge will be decreased from approximately $43 to $9, a decrease of about $34 per quarter, or $136 a year. So that will get pulled off of the water bill starting in July of next year if the millage passes, and you'll go and you would just be paying that on your tax bill instead. So, and of course, the commission is not obligated to levy the maximum if the override is approved. So we talked a little bit about revenue, and this is a more important information than what people realize. But our July budget projects $2.4 million in general fund revenue, and our biggest sources we have 3 major sources of funding. $1.4 million we collect in property taxes, $377,000 in administrative service charge from other funds, and $232,000 of state shared revenue. That leaves about $300,000 that's spread over 35 categories, which mostly are fees, building permits, cable franchise fees, tax administration, fines, and miscellaneous revenue. So there's no opportunities to realistically increase these sources of revenue because they are either fixed, like your property taxes. You're stuck with where you're rolled back in your property valuation, and they directly offset by expenditures such as cable TV revenue or permit fees. You bring what you bring in permits or fees you're paying out on other items, or they're insignificant amounts under $10,000 of those 35 categories. There's probably, I would say, 20 to 25 that are under $10,000. So we could bump each of them up $2,000, and then we'd have an additional $40,000. It's $40,000 is a significant amount of money, and except when you put it up against 2.4 million, it doesn't fix any problems. It doesn't add anything, and then you have to hope you hit those numbers with revenue. So did I jump through two? No, there we go. So where will the money be applied? The heavy override contains 5.3618 of additional mills, and 3.286 of those mills will be applied to water and sewer and solid waste, and that will have a direct effect on your water bill. And those two are tied together because we have that garbage surcharge on the water bill. 0.5 of the mills will be applied to the parks and recreation programs and projects, allow us to do some capital improvement type plans and increase the program offerings that we offer here at the community center and at Gainsborough Park. 0.5 mills applied to the pool wellness center operation. That fund is in some trouble. Is a good word to use. It can't sustain itself anymore. It's the cost of a pool facility as it ages, it grows exponentially, because when you have a repair, it's a repair. It's not a $400 or $500 fix. It's thousands of dollars. So that fund is will have some issues. 0.5 mils will be applied to general operations. It'd be just general city operations, DPW, police, fire, anything that it falls into that category. And then 0.5752, and that's a crazy number compared to all the other ones because it makes the rate 15.5 even, be applied to sidewalk improvements. And the city commission for a while have been discussing of how to get the sidewalks in the city improved. We have some real bad areas, and it's tough. You have to decide on what you want to do, and we've been replacing those as we do street projects. But we're at the end of our street project phase, so we have all these other streets that really need some improvements. So we could raise about $75,000 with that, and that will allow us to do a street of sidewalk. So we could start replacing sidewalks on street wide, or we can go through and fix the ones that are really bad and at no additional cost to the homeowner. And I say that because let's say you have a pretty large front lot and you have 15 sidewalk slabs in front of your property. That sidewalk slab is the homeowner's responsibility at anywhere from $120 to $150 a slab. You're looking at $3,000 maybe, upwards of, and then whatever other costs there are. So this way the city would take responsibility of them. You'd be paying for them that way, and it would be a lot less out of pocket, up front. And you'll get new sidewalks, and there would be no responsibility to the homeowners any longer. So I think it's a pretty good idea. So the next slides, I'm going to kind of go over water and sewer, solid waste, and the pool wellness operations. Those are the couple big ones that we really want to target, so you can be educated on it. And there's a pie graph of where the new funds would be applied to. And we start talking about how it's going to affect the water bill. This is the one that's important to a lot of people. So if passed, the City Commission has pledged to apply 2 mills toward water and sewer fund to help control the rates and pay down fixed costs that are part of the water rate, including the George W. Kuhn drain, like Sherry mentioned. This will have an impact on the water and sewer rate starting July 1st, 2014, if the millage passes, of approximately $20 per million cubic feet, which is 1 unit on your water bill that you see, or 7,480 gallons. So, you know, if you get a bill during the summer and you used 10 units during the summer, your bill would be $200 less right off the bat. And also the garbage charge is on there, like we had talked about in one of the other slides, where you'll have $34 per quarter less right there on your bill. So the average yearly household water consumption for the average home is approximately 9.5 MCF, or 71,000 gallons. So it's about an average decrease on your water bill of $190. So it's a pretty significant amount of money when we're talking about the water bills. And that would be per house. And like I said, average, some people use less, some people use more. So we see some historical water and sewer rates in Pleasant Ridge, and you can see how this there's a trend line there that it just keeps creeping up, and that's the utility. That's the way they operate. A water utility is much different than Edison or AT&T or Comcast, where if one of their lines breaks, they get a truck and they go and run a new wire. When a water pipe breaks, we get to dig a 15-foot hole in the ground, shut off people's water, replace a very expensive pipe. It's more costly type of utility to operate. So you can see from 2005 and 6, when the water and sewer rate was at about $60, and now we're at about the 128, and it was stayed the same these 3 years, even though we were incurring increases from the SACWA and the city of Detroit. The city kept it the same and used some of their fund balance in the account to keep that the same, so the residents wouldn't feel that pain for those 3 years. And then, as you can see, it just keeps going. So this is what we're looking at for next year. If the millage doesn't pass, you can see, at about a 3% increase that we would typically look at, we'd keep going up, and if the millage passes, it'll actually go down a significant amount on the yellow line, and the red line is your garbage charge. So you can see that's a real significant amount. The blue line is the meter charge that you see on your water bill. It's $2.40. You can see for a couple of years it kind of jumped up. We had a meter replacement program where that went up $20 per quarter to pay for that, and then the city didn't need to charge anymore, so they took it off. And it would have been just as easy for the city commission to leave it on there and keep collecting money and adding it to the water fund, but they wanted to pass it on to the residents, the savings. So next we talk about pool and wellness center operations. Since 2012, the general fund has had to supplement the pool wellness center fund to the tune of over $50,000. The repairs, fixes, like I said, on the pool side, get costly, and the complex is not necessarily in need of all these repairs, but when one of these things goes bad, and they do go bad, they are costly. A pump replacement, which we've had to do, we had to do one last year on the smaller pump that operates the toys. It was $4,500, and we actually have a pump for the big pool. We have a spare one sitting there in case it breaks, because every year you go and turn it on and it just hums because it's starting to seize itself up, and they're expensive. They're big pumps. Filter sand replacement, which we had to do this year, is $5,000. Umbrella fabric replacement can be upwards of $3,000 per umbrella. Lounge chair repair to come in and have the chairs restrapped is upwards of $3,000, and that's an annual type cost. Those chairs, the straps on those chairs break on a regular basis. And this is the big one, Marsite repair, which we've fortunately haven't had to do. And Marsite is the surface of the pool, and I say 40,000 plus. That's probably on the low end to do that replacement of that. And the pool company was just out putting the cover on today, and they can't believe that we haven't done it yet. And that's a credit. We keep the chemicals in the pool at the right levels they're supposed to be at. We keep chlorine in it all winter long, so it doesn't turn green, and they have to acid wash the pool, and that's helped prolong the life of that Marsite, but it will eventually need replacement. So we have a little chart here on maintenance costs, and you can see when we started, they were lower, and as we keep going up, they get higher. We had a good year right here. I think that must have been a cool summer. But they're upwards now in the $20,000 to $25,000 range, and that's about what it is just to go. So we have revenues expenditures for the pool account there. You can see we took a dip down here, and we're just not collecting the same amount that we used to because of the property taxes. So that was proposal A. That's the override. I'm going to touch real quick on proposal B. It's really just a renewal of the infrastructure millage that we're currently paying, and it's just to be able to levy for the next 20 years to increase or to renew the infrastructure millage that's replaced our roads and kept the city looking beautiful. It's a renewal of the current millage. If the millage is renewed, we revert back to the 3.0 mills from 2.589 in July of 2015. That's not next year, that's in 15. And year to date, the city has completely reconstructed 20 of the 26 roads throughout the city, so we have 6 left. And the original plan didn't even include all the streets, Ridge Road, Indiana, and Hanover, because they were in good shape when they originally approved the plan. And when interest rates were at their highest, the city was able to reconstruct 2 streets per year. That's not the case anymore. And SCAF interest helps fund that infrastructure millage, and that's why I say when we talk about those. So for your information, we've created a 1-page plus document that some of you might have already grabbed as you walked in, and that make sure you pick that up. It's specific to your house, like Sherry said. Page shows your water usage from July 12 to 13 and your 2000 taxable value. It'll show the reduction that your water bill will see, the full increase to your tax bill if both proposals pass, and your total net change, because there'll be a negative on the water side and there'll be a positive on the tax side, so you'll see a net change. Those numbers are variable. They could change year to year based on the amount of water you use and your taxable value, but we tried to come up with some good numbers so you can at least see what the net effect will be. You'll just find your address in the book, you'll tear out the page and you take it with you, and then we'll also have a full list on the website here in the next couple days, where if you're not able to look up that or you lose your sheet, you'll be able to go and see your whole street and find your address. More information, the next public information meeting is scheduled for October 10th. You can go to the website and get some more information and documents. I'll have this PowerPoint up there. And remember to pick up your 1-page plus before you leave tonight or at City Hall. Yeah, that's will be on there, the spreadsheet with all the addresses. So that's it for me. So I guess if we have any questions or.
So I guess I think probably the best thing now is to answer some of your questions. Anything that we haven't included that you would like to see included in the printed information, you tell us. It's probably going to be helpful when you see your actual document, know what the impact will be. That may spur some questions on your part too. Feel free to call us, send us an email, anything you need. Anyone?
You should come up here. Hi, I'm Mike Weeder. I live on Hanover. I just want to be sure I understand it. I'm sure the page out in the hallway will explain my personal tax increase, but it looks, I'm not quite sure I'm clear on all of this. On the back, it says that the current rate is 18.49. Is that the cumulative current rate where you take, but on the front, it looks like we take 11.42 plus 1.71.
The 11 is the general fund amount, and then the 18 is all of the mills.
Okay, so we're looking at that would be from, this is nice, this is well done. Thank you again, Sherry, for such a good job making this clarified. 18.49 then to 24.4 would be, we were talking about a 5 point something, right? So 5 divided by 18. What's the percent increase? That's the number most people want to know. How much more money do I pay next year? I grant you there's a decrease in the water bill, and that's probably all on my personal one. But that looks to me like something on the order of a 25% tax increase.
I didn't figure the increase.
Yeah.
Percentage-wise. We looked at it from the point of, if this is gonna be a decrease to to my water bill and an increase to my tax bill, you know, that gives you at least the information.
I think most people would like to know, you know, like we
Sure,
paid
well,
maybe
can add that.
$4,800, how much percent, cause
Okay.
47 one.
27 point something percent increase.
Yeah, so it's a
you,
significant tax increase. We're not talking about a couple $100.
Former Commissioner Smith?
I appreciate all the work that's gone into this and your explanation, but I'm still a little unclear. You're asking for an increase from 11.4 to 15.5 in reality, but you're asking us to approve an increase from 11.4 to 20. That's like almost 100% differential between what you think you need and what you're asking us to approve. I can see having a little leeway in there if things don't go right with the state, which they never do. The state would like to take all our money and leave us in total jeopardy.
Yes.
And they've done their best to do that. But with what we have, I just don't understand that huge differential there. It would seem more prudent to say, okay, let's have an extra mill or two above that, and then we'll go back to the voters if things go totally awry in the state. But it just seems like a larger gap than would be prudent in the foreseeable future.
I understand that, and that was certainly the topic that was discussed not only at the city commission level, but I'm sure that's a topic that's being discussed in the community. And as I mentioned, Dave, it's a matter of what may be coming in the future. The ability to have that flexibility for you, the public, to decide whether or not there should be an increase, because as you know, it has happened in the past at budget time, those millages can also be decreased. And, you know, I said that to one person and they chuckled, but I know personally that that has happened. And the Pleasant Ridge City Commission wouldn't hesitate to do that if a millage is not needed or as much of a millage. So the idea was not to have to go back to the voters. We see that in other communities where there's a millage question in November, and maybe the next year there's another question because they didn't anticipate what might have been coming. And the same concern that you expressed this evening about, well, why do you need that? I believe, and it was my recommendation, that it be at least approved to the 20, because I know there are already steps and processes in place that cannot be done without public awareness. And the promise is 5.3, 3816. 5.3816 is the amount that's going to be levied, at least for now. And if there is any change to that in the future, it could only be done so after a public hearing and public notices are out. So it's whatever comfort level you have, but the city commission absolutely thought about that.
Hi, I'm Jim, and actually, I don't really have any questions, but I do have a comment. I feel compelled to make it. The 11 to 15 and the 18 to 24, it's important to note that that's just your city taxes. So it's not actually going to increase your tax bill by 26 or 27% because you've got school taxes, you've got county and everything. So I think it works out to like a 12% increase overall, but I think that was important to know.
Thank you, yes. Anyone else?
I just have a quick question. You said that it could go up to 20 mils, but it can't be done without a public discussion on it?
A public hearing is actually required.
Okay, but inside here it says, can the city commission increase the number of mills to 20 if the proposal passes? And here it says the governing body of Pleasant Ridge cannot levy any amount without a public vote. So is it a vote or just public awareness?
It's not a public vote. It would be a vote of the governing body. I don't know.
No, when we talk about a public vote, they were talking about this initial vote right now. The city commission just can't go and impose taxes on you, right?
I'm gonna change that wording.
So right
It's
now
not
it
good.
says that they can't just go and impose taxes.
It says on here, can the city commission increase the number of mills to 20 if the proposal passes?
Yeah,
And it says no, you have to have.
we gotta change that. Thank you for that. It will take a vote of the governing body, and it will take a public hearing,
But
and,
not a vote.
correct.
Hi, Pete Stenger on Oxford. I have the same concern about, do we need to go for that much? But my question actually isn't in that area. On the infrastructure improvement where we did, I think it was, you said 20 of 26 roads. Was that a pay-as-you-go project? In other words, we have paid for the cost, it's done for those ones. So if we have
Yeah.
6 more roads to do, and I assume we're looking at a pay-as-you-go, we get the 6 other roads done, presumably it's gonna cost a lot less than the 20, why do we need that much? Why
Yes.
can't we go for something, or is there some other thing, okay, we've done the roads now, we finished the last 6, what's the other big thing on the horizon that would need the renewal to be at that level and not some much less
Right,
lower number?
for 10 years or whatever.
Right.
Well, the thought process behind that is, as we went through these, the roads, you know, we learned also as we went along. What we did not do and did not have funding to do at the time was replace water mains and sewer mains. Those are 80-plus years old. We repair them if there's an area under the street that needs it, and those can be lined, so it isn't like we have to tear up the street to do it. So that was part of this long-range plan, and that would be at significant cost that could be paid for with infrastructure funds. And then, the sidewalk program was under,
We'd be able to pull it off of that general right now once the streets are done.
would qualify under the infrastructure millage. And the sidewalk program is actually, I think it's pretty exciting where, you know, residents would never have to pay for maintenance or repair of a sidewalk. There was some talk about how that program would work and whether or not residents would be asked to pay an annual fee of perhaps $30, and that would help offset, but that's, you know, to come and be worked out. So there are other infrastructure projects that are very costly, and they would then be included under the infrastructure millage as we would continue.
What's the lifespan on the newly repaired, or newly done streets? It's only about 20 years, isn't it?
It's about 20 to 25 years, as you
So,
know.
just about the time we get them finished, we have to start looking at the ones we did first.
Correct, and that's not gonna take a total, you know, removal and replacement, but there are already streets like Cambridge and Amherst that we need to go back. They're coming up on 20 years and make repairs.
And Sherry, if I may, streets like Ridge Road were done by the state or county before this whole program started. And Ridge Road is asphalt, not the concrete we've done elsewhere. And it's a very long street. So in addition to what Dave Smith is saying about we get 10 years into this program and some of these new streets are gonna be 30 years old, we have streets like Ridge that were totally outside of the program that are already in need of repair.
Thank you.
I'm Vince Rizzo, I live on Maplefield. If this bond passes from the rate that current, the new one, what's the expected increase in revenues, dollar amounts? I'm sure you guys would have a number.
We do.
If you look in there on figure 1 on the sheet there, it shows what the amount of dollars that will be raised. So these are estimates based on taxable values. It's $255,000 toward water and sewer, $130,000 toward recreation and pool, $65,000 in general operations, $75,000 to sidewalk improvements, and $165,000 to solid waste, for a total of $690,000.
That would be the additional funds that would be generated then?
That would be the additional funds.
Okay, and would the commission consider something, change of language? I'm like a lot of these other people, you know, when you say 20 mills, we don't know what the kitchen's gonna be like in 2 or 3 years, and if those people have the power to raise our taxes another 5, 6 mills, and we have no control of that, I think a
But
lot of
you
people
have
would have.
control. You do have control.
Well, if they just have a public hearing, I thought the way you said it, we gave them the right to do it. If they have a public hearing and we voice our opinion against that, that doesn't mean that they won't do it though.
They have had the right, the governing body has had the right to lower and reduce millage rates at every budget season. And every time a budget is adopted in June, it's also introduced in May, and it's also talked about in April. There is plenty of opportunity for residents to have input, and I would guess it is, I think it's more than a guess, knowing the Pleasant Ridge that I know. These things do not go by without being noticed.
I would hope that
And
the Pleasant Ridge that you know continues to be, but if it doesn't,
I have no reason to doubt that it will not.
I'm glad you do.
And remember, like I had said, from day one of tax season, you start getting rolled back again on that
Right.
20. So it will start to
It'll start to
it starts to
decrease.
creep its way back down. So I mean, there could be a time, like I said, in 6 to 7 years when you're already rolled back to 18 off of the 20, and you wouldn't be able the commission wouldn't even be able to go up to the 20 because the rollback has already started kicking in.
Steve Angeloff, Ridge Road. When I look around this room, I see a lot of gray hair. And, check the mirror, folks. I see a lot of gray hair here. We've got retirees, people that are on fixed incomes, people who have had their pensions savaged. We don't have the option to go to anyone and say, we need more money. And we have to make do with what we have. And it's my suggestion to you that I personally see ample opportunities here for more cost reductions in the city of Pleasant Ridge. And my suggestion to you is go back to your drawing boards, figure out a way to do what we have to do, live within your means.
Mr. Angeloff, I appreciate your comments, and I understand. In 2009 and 10, when I brought forth the idea of a millage, and we were really in the throes of the crisis time in Michigan, and people were losing their jobs, and we had foreclosures even in Pleasant Ridge. And clear direction and conversation was held at that time by the elected officials that we will not ask people for any increase in a millage at this time because people are already struggling. So that millage question, although I knew, and I think a lot of people understood, that Pleasant Ridge is not the kind of community that just goes and runs and asks for more money. We have made tremendous, deep, significant reductions in services and personnel. We have 3 full-time people that work at City Hall. There's not many city halls, regardless of the size of your city, that have that. So, and I'm not here to talk about, what should be reduced or what could be. I'm here to tell you that I believe, and the only reason I presented this at this time is this is a real need for this city. I think it's a comprehensive proposal, explained as to why we need it. It isn't as though we have not taken steps first before we ask you for an increase. And whatever wallet you give the administration is what we will do business with. So if it passes, I'm elated. And I think it'll be a statement that We enjoy the quality of life we have, and we intend to preserve that quality of life. And if it doesn't pass, then whatever the budget is what we will operate under. You will see some reductions next in services. You may see a pool that we have to sell non-resident memberships. There are some options. Those are the kind of options we now will have to look at though. So I respect what you have to say, and that's why November 5th, you will have the opportunity to voice your opinion.
Okay,
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, thank you all. We hope you all come back on October 10th. Spread the word. Stop and get your information, or you can get it online. By all means, look at the spreadsheet. It's really interesting info. And thanks again.